My husband, unaware of my $325,000 income, sent me a text message that read, "I have filed for divorce. I am taking the house and the car, LOL." He left me while I was in the hospital fighting for my life and got married again to a 24-year-old yoga instructor. 3 days later, he called me in a panic with 185 missed calls. But by then, it was too late. I am Sophia, 34 years old, and I woke up to the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor instead of the voice of the man I had loved for 7 years. The nurse told me I had suffered from stress-induced cardiomyopathy, literally a broken heart syndrome caused by extreme emotional shock. My phone sat on the bedside table vibrating with a notification that would shatter whatever was left of my spirit. It was that text from Dante. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring, my chest tightening again. But the real blow came when I opened Instagram. There he was, live streaming his engagement party. He was holding a glass of champagne, laughing with a woman I recognized from his gym. Emily. She was young, blonde, and hanging onto his arm like a trophy. He thought he had won. He thought he had left his boring, low-income accountant wife with nothing. But Dante made one fatal calculation. He did not know that the G-Wagon he was leaning on, the mansion he was partying in, and the lifestyle he was flaunting were never his to begin with. Before I tell you how I brought his world crashing down in 48 hours, let me know in the comments if you have ever been underestimated by the person you sacrificed everything for. Please like and subscribe if you are ready to see justice served cold. 3 days later, I signed my discharge papers against medical advice. The doctor warned me that my heart was still fragile, but I told him my heart was no longer broken. It was just frozen solid. I stood on the curb outside Emory University Hospital, shivering in my thin cardigan. The Atlanta air was humid and heavy. I called a taxi because my husband had taken my car keys. As the car pulled into our driveway in Buckhead, an upscale neighborhood where Black excellence was the standard and reputation was everything, my stomach turned. I walked up the stone pathway, reaching for the smart lock keypad on the front door. I punched in our anniversary code. Error. I tried again, my fingers trembling slightly. Error. The light on the lock flashed red. He had changed the code. Suddenly, the heavy oak door swung open. But it was not Dante. It was Emily. She was wearing my silk robe, the one I bought on a trip to Paris that Dante thought I had saved up for months to afford. Her hair was messy, and she held a glass of my favorite vintage wine. "Oh, you are here," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Dante, your ex is fast." Dante appeared behind her. He looked good, I will give him that. His muscles were defined under his tight t-shirt, a testament to the hours he spent at the gym while I was working late. But his eyes were empty. He did not ask how I was. He did not ask if I survived the heart attack. He just kicked a suitcase down the front steps. It tumbled onto the manicured grass, spilling my old sweaters and sensible shoes everywhere. "Get your trash off my property, Sophia," Dante sneered. I looked at him. Truly, looked at him. This was the man I had built up from nothing. "Dante," I said, my voice raspy from the ventilator. "I just got out of the intensive care unit." "You changed the locks," he laughed, wrapping a possessive arm around Emily's waist. "I need a fresh start, Sophia. Look at Emily. She is 24, she is white, she has connections in the industry, she knows how to market my gym to the right demographic. She is going to put me on the map. What do you bring to the table? You are just a boring accountant. You smell like spreadsheets and hospital bleach. I have outgrown you." I could feel the eyes of our neighbors, the Johnsons and the Davises, peering through their blinds. In our community, a scene like this was the ultimate humiliation. To be discarded on the front lawn like yesterday is garbage. Emily giggled, sipping the wine. "Bye, Sophia. Do not be a stalker," she said, blowing a kiss. Dante moved toward the driveway, patting the hood of the matte black G-Wagon parked there. This car deserves a queen, not a peasant, he said. I stood there, silence ringing in my ears. I did not scream. I did not cry. I looked at the G-Wagon. I looked at the house. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not a happy smile. A shark-is smile. Because I knew something they did not. That car was not his. That house was not his. And the boring accountant he just kicked out was actually the senior crisis manager holding the title to his entire existence. I picked up my suitcase, turned around, and got back into the waiting taxi. As we drove away, I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer. It was time to introduce Dante to the real Sophia. The conference room in the high-rise office of Dante's lawyer was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Atlanta skyline, a view that usually cost hundreds of dollars an hour to enjoy. The air conditioning was set to a temperature that felt like a meat locker, likely a tactic to make opposing parties uncomfortable and eager to leave. I sat on one side of the massive mahogany table, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Across from me sat the tribunal of my demise. Dante looking smug in a suit I knew he had put on a credit card that was nearing its limit. Emily wearing a white dress that was entirely too bridal for a legal meeting, sitting so close to him they were practically sharing a chair. And Mr. Vance, a divorce attorney known for being as shark-like as he was expensive. Mr. Vance slid a thick stack of documents across the polished wood surface toward me. The sound of the paper sliding was the only noise in the room for a long moment. He cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses with a look of practiced pity. Mrs. Jenkins, or should I say, Ms. Carter. Soon he began, his voice dripping with condescension. We have prepared a no-contest divorce agreement. Given the circumstances of your separation and the clear disparity in lifestyle contributions, my client feels this is the most generous offer you are going to get. We suggest you sign it to avoid a lengthy and embarrassing court battle. I looked at the document. The header read, Dissolution of Marriage Settlement Agreement in bold black letters. I did not reach for it immediately. I just looked at Dante. He was refusing to make eye contact, focusing intently on the cufflink of his shirt. Read it, Sophia, Dante said, his voice tight. Just read it and let us get this over with. I have a business to run. I opened the folder. As I scanned the legal jargon, I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep my expression neutral. It was a masterpiece of delusion. Clause 1 stated that Dante was the primary financial provider during the marriage. Clause 2 claimed ownership of the marital residence in Buckhead, valued at $2.5 million. Clause 3 claimed full possession of the matte black G-Wagon. Clause 4 demanded that I waive any claim to spousal support, citing my lack of significant contribution to the household assets. It was bold. It was audacious. It was a lie so big it was almost impressive. Dante was banking on the fact that I had always played the role of the quiet, supportive wife. The wife who handled the books in the background while he played the star. He truly believed his own hype. He believed that because his name was on the gym sign, he was the tycoon. He had conveniently forgotten who structured the loans, who managed the payroll, and whose credit score was actually leveraged to get the keys to that house he wanted so badly. Emily placed a hand on Dante's forearm, her diamond ring catching the light. It was a flashy thing, likely cubic zirconia, but she wore it like the Hope diamond. She leaned forward, her eyes wide with a performance of sympathy that made my stomach turn. Sophia, listen, she said, her voice breathy and high-pitched. I know you are hurt. I would be too if I lost a man like Dante, but you have to be realistic. You cannot afford the lifestyle he lives. You are just, regular. Please, just sign the papers. Let him go. Love is not a crime, Sophia. We just want to be happy. Don't be the bitter ex-wife who drags this out. It gives you wrinkles. Dante nodded, gaining confidence from her insult. Exactly. Look, Sophia, I am doing you a favor. I am taking the house and the car payments off your hands. You can go back to a nice little apartment, get a cat, focus on your little accounting job. You won't have the pressure of trying to keep up with me anymore. I deserve a partner who matches my ambition. Emily gets the vision. She is going to help me franchise the gym. We are building an empire. I looked from Dante to Emily, then to the lawyer who was checking his watch, clearly bored by my silence. They saw a defeated woman. They saw a wife who had been replaced by a younger, prettier model. They saw a victim. I saw an opportunity. If I fought them now, if I screamed that I paid for everything, I would have to prove it. I would have to drag out bank statements and reveal my true net worth. I would have to show them that I made $325,000 a year, not $40,000. And if I did that, the judge might order me to pay him alimony. If I revealed my hand now, Dante would fight for half of my actual assets. But if I signed this document stating that Dante was the sole owner of the house and the car, and that he accepted full financial responsibility for them, I was legally giving him assets he did not actually own. The house was held by a trust. The car was a corporate lease under a holding company. By claiming them as his personal property in a legal affidavit, and by me waiving my rights to them, he was effectively committing perjury and accepting liability for debts he could not pay. He was stealing a burning building and locking the door from the inside. I looked at Mr. Vance. So to be clear, I asked, keeping my voice small and trembling slightly, if I sign this, I get nothing. I walk away with just my personal effects, and Dante keeps the house, the car, and the business. That is correct, Mr. Vance said, tapping his pen on the table. And in exchange, Dante agrees not to sue you for emotional distress caused by your resistance to the separation. I took a deep breath. I picked up the heavy fountain pen lying on the table. Sophia, don't think about it, just do it. Dante urged, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. I uncapped the pen. The ink was black. Permanent. I lowered the tip to the signature line. Okay, I whispered. You win, Dante. You can have it all. I signed my name, Sophia Marie Jenkins. Then I dated it. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper seemed to echo in the room. When I lifted the pen, the tension in the room snapped. Emily let out a squeal of delight and kissed Dante on the cheek. Mr. Vance snatched the papers away before I could change my mind, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Smart choice, Ms. Carter, the lawyer said, already packing his briefcase. You saved yourself a lot of legal fees. Dante stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and relief. I am glad you were sensible, Sophia. I will give you 24 hours to get the rest of your things out of the house. After that, I am changing the codes again. Emily and I have some redecorating to do. We need to get that depressing energy out of there. We are going to paint the master bedroom sage green, Emily added, smirking at me. It is so much more modern. I stood up slowly. I did not look at Emily. I looked straight at Dante. Goodbye, Dante, I said. I hope the empire is everything you dreamed of. I walked out of that office without looking back. As the heavy glass doors closed behind me, I could hear their laughter. They were celebrating. They were opening champagne. They thought they had stripped me of everything. I walked to the elevator and pressed the down button. As the door slid open, I finally allowed myself to smile. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of the executioner who had just tightened the noose. They had 24 hours. 24 hours until the bank, which was actually my holding company, received the notification that the tenant had violated the lease agreement by claiming ownership. 24 hours until the car dealership received the alert that an unauthorized driver was claiming possession of a corporate vehicle. Dante wanted the house. He could have the house. He just didn't know that the house came with a monthly payment of $12,000 that was due in 3 days, and the investor who usually covered it, me, had just legally severed all ties. I stepped into the elevator and pulled out my phone. I dialed my assistant, Sarah. Sarah. I said, my voice strong and clear, entirely different from the meek woman in the lawyer's office. Initiate phase 2. Send the foreclosure notice to the residents on Peachtree Road and call the repo team for the G-Wagon. Tell them the vehicle is located at the downtown Marriott. I watched the floor numbers count down. 5, 4, 3. Dante thought he had buried me. He forgot that I was a seed. And the storm he just started, it was exactly what I needed to grow. I sat in my car in the parking garage of the law firm, my hand hovering over my phone screen. The engine was off, and the silence inside the vehicle felt heavy, pressing against my eardrums. I had just signed away my marriage, my home, and my dignity on paper. But there was one final thread I needed to cut before I could fully unleash the storm I had prepared. I needed to call Louise. For 7 years, Dante's mother had been the closest thing I had to a maternal figure. My own parents had passed when I was in college, leaving me to navigate the world alone until I met Dante. I had cooked in her kitchen for Thanksgiving, sat by her bedside when she was sick, and listened to her endless stories about the glory days of the Jenkins family. I wanted to believe, perhaps naively, that her love for me was separate from her son's inability to be a decent man. I wanted to believe that the woman who called me daughter for nearly a decade would at least ask if I was okay after surviving a heart attack. I dialed her number. It rang once, twice, then the click of the connection. "Hello," Louise said. Her voice was not warm. It was clipped sharp, the tone she usually reserved for telemarketers or waitstaff she deemed incompetent. "Hello, Mama Louise," I said, the old habit of using her pet name slipping out before I could stop it. "It is Sophia. I just wanted to call and let you know that I signed the papers. I wanted you to hear it from me and to say goodbye properly." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a sigh that sounded like a gust of wind rattling dry leaves. "Well, praise God for that," Louise replied. "I am glad you finally did the right thing, Sophia. Dante told me you were dragging your feet. He has been through enough stress trying to keep that gym afloat without you adding to his burden." The accusation hit me like a physical slap. I gripped the steering wheel with my free hand. Dante's stress. I was the one who had just spent a week in the ICU because my heart literally gave out from working 80-hour weeks to fund his lifestyle. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Louise," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I just wanted to thank you for welcoming me into the family all those years ago. I know things are ending badly between Dante and me, but I hoped we could part on good terms." "Good terms," Louise scoffed. Her voice rose an octave, trembling with self-righteous indignation. "You want good terms after you embarrassed my son, getting sick and causing a scene? And now he tells me you were planning to fight him for the house? That house is my son's legacy. He built that life. He deserves a woman who supports his vision, not one who tries to tear it down because she is jealous." I closed my eyes, a bitter laugh bubbling up in my throat. He built that life. Dante could not even build a sandwich without my help, but I stayed silent, letting her spew her venom. "And speaking of support," Louise continued, her tone shifting from angry to demanding. "Before you disappear to wherever you are going, I need you to return the pearl necklace." I blinked, confused. "The pearls?" "Yes, the South Sea pearls Dante bought for you for your 5th anniversary," she said. "Those belong to the Jenkins family women. Since you are no longer a Jenkins, you have no right to keep them. I want to give them to Emily. She is going to be a proper wife to him. A real helpmate." My breath caught in my throat. I remembered those pearls vividly. I remembered standing in the jewelry store looking at the price tag that made Dante sweat. I remembered him saying he couldn't afford them. And I remembered going back the next day using my annual bonus check from the crisis management firm and buying them myself. I had given them to Dante to give to me just so he could feel like a big shot in front of his mother at dinner that night. "Louise," I said quietly. "Dante did not buy those pearls. I did." "Don't you lie to me, Sophia," she snapped. "My son is a generous provider. He has taken care of everyone in this family, just like he paid for my heart surgery last year. If it wasn't for his hard work at that gym, I would be dead. He is a good man, and Emily sees that. She is an angel, that girl. She is already planning a charity gala for the church." That is the kind of class this family needs, not your moping around. The mention of the surgery was the final straw. It shattered whatever sentimental glass was left in my heart. Last winter, Louise had needed a triple bypass and a valve replacement. Her insurance had denied the claim. Dante had called me crying, saying he didn't have the $85,000 needed for the procedure. I had wired the money directly to the hospital from my private investment account the next morning. I had told Dante to tell her it was from his business savings, because I didn't want him to feel emasculated in front of his mother. So in her version of reality, the son who was currently drowning in debt was her savior, and the daughter-in-law who had quietly saved her life was the villain. I see, I said. My voice was no longer shaking. It was cold. It was final. You are right, Louise. Emily is the perfect match for this family. She deserves the pearls. She deserves Dante. And she certainly deserves a mother-in-law like you. I will send a courier with the pearls, I added. I wouldn't want to keep anything that reminds me of this mistake. I hung up before she could respond. I stared at the phone for a second, looking at the contact photo of us smiling at a barbecue 3 years ago. With a tap of my thumb, I blocked her number. Then I blocked Dante. Then his sister. Then every single cousin and aunt who had sat at my table and eaten my food while judging me. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and started the car. As I drove out of the dark garage and into the blinding afternoon sun of downtown Atlanta, I felt lighter. The heaviness in my chest was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. 20 minutes later, I pulled my beat-up Toyota, the one I drove to maintain my cover, into the underground VIP lot of the Sovereign Building. I parked next to the luxury sedans and sports cars of the city's elite. I didn't look at them. I walked straight to the private elevator bank reserved for executive leadership. I reached into my bag and pulled out my ID badge. It didn't say, Sophia Jenkins, accountant. It read, Sophia Carter, Senior Vice President of Risk Management and Crisis Resolution. I approached the turnstile. The security guard, a hulking man named Mr. Henderson, who had been with the firm for 20 years, stood up straighter when he saw me. He tipped his cap. Good afternoon, Ms. Carter, he said, his voice respectful. We were worried when we heard you were in the hospital. It is good to have you back. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, I said, offering him a genuine smile, the first one in days. It is good to be back. I tapped my badge against the scanner. Beep! The sound was sharp, loud, and incredibly satisfying. The glass barriers slid open effortlessly. I stepped through, leaving the humidity of the street and the mess of my marriage behind. The air inside the lobby was cool, scented with white tea and ambition. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 45th floor. As the doors closed, watching my reflection in the polished steel, I straightened my blazer. The weeping wife was gone. The boring accountant was dead. The woman staring back at me was a shark who smelled blood in the water. And it was feeding time. The elevator doors slid open on the 45th floor, revealing a world that Dante could not even imagine, let alone afford. The reception area was bathed in natural light, the walls lined with modern art that cost more than the G-Wagon he was currently driving. I stepped onto the plush carpet, the sound of my heels absorbed by the silence of wealth and power. This was my domain. Here, I was not Sophia, the mousy wife who clipped coupons to save 50 cents on laundry detergent. Here I was, Ms. Carter, the Vice President of Risk Management and Crisis Resolution for one of the largest financial firms in the Southeast. My assistant Sarah was already waiting at her desk outside my corner office. She stood up immediately, her tablet in hand, her expression professional but filled with a subtle warmth she only showed to me. Welcome back, Ms. Carter, Sarah said, walking beside me as I headed toward my office door. We have the quarterly risk assessments for the tech merger ready for your review, and the board has been asking about your availability for the summit in Chicago. I nodded, taking the tablet she offered. Thank you, Sarah. Clear my schedule for the next hour. I have some personal housekeeping to take care of. I walked into my office and closed the door. The room was expansive, with a panoramic view of the Atlanta skyline. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the city. Somewhere down there in the traffic and the noise, Dante was probably bragging to Emily about how he had won. He was probably telling her that he had finally shed the dead weight of a wife who didn't understand his hustle. The irony was bitter on my tongue. Dante Jenkins, the man who prided himself on being an alpha male, a provider, a king in his own castle, had been living on an allowance from his wife for 5 years. He just didn't know it. I walked over to my desk, a sleek mahogany surface that was free of clutter, and sat down in my leather executive chair. It felt like a throne. I opened the top drawer and pulled out a file marked D. Jim Ventures. I remembered the day I decided to lie to him. It was 4 years ago. I had just been promoted to director, and my salary had jumped to $200,000. I had come home bursting with excitement, a bottle of champagne in my hand, ready to celebrate. But when I walked in, Dante was sitting on the couch staring at the floor, a crumbled rejection letter from a bank loan officer in his hand. He had looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Sophia, I feel like less than a man. I can't get funding for the gym. If I can't provide for this family, if I am not the one bringing home the big checks, then who am I? I can't be with a woman who wears the pants, Sophia. It kills me." That night I made a choice born out of love, but fueled by his fragility. I chose his ego over my truth. I hid the champagne. I never told him about the promotion. Instead, I told him I got a small cost of living raise. I told him I was just a mid-level accountant, handling spreadsheets for boring corporate clients. To save his masculinity, I became small. I created a shell company, Pegasus Holdings, and approved his loan myself. I pretended the money came from an anonymous angel investor who believed in his vision. For years, I funneled my bonuses, my stock dividends, and a chunk of my $325,000 salary into his failing business. Every new treadmill, every renovation, every marketing campaign he launched was paid for by the wife he called boring. I did it to keep him. I did it because I thought that if I supported his dream, eventually he would be secure enough to love me for who I really was. But I was wrong. I fed a monster. I financed his arrogance. And in return, he used the confidence I bought him to find a younger, flashier woman who he thought matched the lifestyle I was secretly paying for. I opened the file on my desk. Inside were the loan agreements for D. Jim. They were complex, drafted by my best lawyers to look like standard venture capital contracts, but they contained specific clauses designed to protect the investor. Me. Specifically Clause 14. I pressed the intercom button on my desk phone. "Sarah, please come in, and bring a notary." Sarah entered a moment later, followed by our in-house legal counsel. They looked at me, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. I was not the heartbroken woman who had left for the hospital a week ago. I was the vice president of risk management, and I had identified a liability that needed to be liquidated. "Sarah," I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion, "I am initiating a hostile recall of all assets under Pegasus Holdings regarding the D. Jim account." Sarah's eyes widened slightly, but she tapped away on her tablet. "The recall is based on what grounds, Ms. Carter?" I pointed to the paragraph in the contract, Clause 14, the Morality and Stability Clause. It states that the primary operator of the business must maintain a stable public image and financial standing. It also states that if the operator undergoes significant legal or personal turmoil that could jeopardize the brand's reputation, the investor has the right to demand immediate repayment of the principal loan amount. I looked up at Sarah. The operator has just filed for a divorce that involves public humiliation of a spouse. He is also currently cohabiting with a mistress while claiming assets he does not own in a legal affidavit. That is fraud. And fraud is a violation of Clause 14. Sarah nodded, a small knowing smile playing on her lips. She hated Dante. She had seen how he talked down to me on the rare occasions he called the office thinking I was a subordinate. "I understand," Sarah said. "And the repayment terms." "Immediate," I said. "Full liquidity. 72 hours." I picked up a pen. "If he cannot pay, which we know he cannot, Pegasus Holdings exercises its right to seize collateral. That includes the physical equipment, the lease on the building, and the intellectual property rights to the D-Gym brand. I signed the order. Dante thought I was an accountant who was good at saving pennies. He forgot that crisis managers are experts at calculating the exact cost of a disaster, and he was about to find out that the price of his betrayal was exactly everything he had. "Send the notice, Sarah," I said, handing her the file. "Send it via courier to the gym, and send a copy to his new fiancé. I want her to know exactly what kind of empire she is marrying into." As Sarah left the room to execute the order, I turned back to the window. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the city. I checked my watch. It was 5 o'clock. Dante would be at the gym right now, probably training a high-end client, telling them about his big plans for expansion. In about an hour, a man in a suit would walk through those doors and hand him a piece of paper that would turn his cardboard castle into dust. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of expensive leather and conditioned air. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to shrink. I didn't feel the need to hide my paycheck or apologize for my success. Dante wanted a woman who didn't work too hard. He wanted a woman who knew her place. Well, he was about to learn that my place was in the boardroom signing the checks that he could no longer cash. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I transferred $50,000 from my checking account to a new vacation fund. I deserved a break. Maybe Paris, maybe Bali, somewhere where the only thing fragile was the croissants, not the men. I tapped the screen, watching the numbers move. It was just money, but to Dante it was oxygen, and I had just cut off the supply. The infinity pool at the Viceroy Los Cabos creates an illusion of the water merging seamlessly with the horizon, a perfect metaphor for the delusion Dante and Emily were currently living in. While I was in Atlanta, finalizing the liquidation of the assets that Dante thought he owned, he was sitting at a private oceanfront table ordering Wagyu beef and lobster thermidor. He was wearing sunglasses at night, a habit he picked up from music videos, and Emily was busy snapping photos of her food to prove to her followers that she had secured the bag. They were celebrating their victory, unaware that the war was already over and they were the casualties. According to the credit monitoring alerts flashing on my screen, the bill for their romantic dinner came to exactly $842. Dante, feeling generous and powerful, threw his heavy metal black card onto the check tray without even looking at the total. He probably winked at the waiter. He probably made a joke about big business. He had used that card for 5 years to pay for everything from his gym equipment to his haircuts. He believed it was a corporate expense account linked to his business revenue. He had no idea it was actually a supplementary card linked to a high-yield trust account that I managed. An account that I had closed exactly 4 hours ago. The waiter returned to the table. He did not have the receipt for Dante to sign. He had the card held delicately between his thumb and forefinger, and a look of professional apology that every server hates to wear. "Sir," the waiter said softly, leaning in so the neighboring tables wouldn't hear, "I am afraid the transaction was declined." Dante laughed. It was a loud, arrogant sound. "That is impossible," he said loud enough for the couple at the next table to glance over. "Run it again. It is probably a fraud alert because I am traveling internationally. I spend a lot of money, so the bank gets nervous." The waiter nodded and walked away. He returned 2 minutes later. The look on his face was grave. "I am sorry, sir. It says do not honor. We tried 3 times. Do you have another form of payment?" The smile slid off Emily's face. She lowered her phone. "Dante, what is going on?" she whispered, looking around to see if anyone was filming. Dante stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the stone floor. "This is ridiculous. My bank is incompetent. Hold on." He pulled out his phone and marched away from the table, leaving Emily alone with the unfinished lobster and the judgmental stares of the waitstaff. I can only imagine the conversation that followed because I know exactly what the automated system told him. When he dialed the priority number on the back of the card, he did not get the concierge service he was used to. He got the General Fraud Department. I am looking at the call log from my provider. He spent 12 minutes on hold, 12 minutes of sweating in his linen suit, while his new wife sat alone wondering why the billionaire lifestyle was hitting a snag on day one. Finally, a representative answered. Dante started shouting immediately. I want this hold lifted. I am Dante Jenkins. I have a limit of 50,000 on this card. I wish I could have heard the representative's voice when she delivered the news. Sir, that account has been closed by the primary account holder Pegasus Holdings. The balance is zero. The line of credit has been revoked. Dante likely froze. Pegasus Holdings. That was the company that invested in his gym. That was the angel investor. Why would they cut his personal credit card? And then the cold realization must have started to creep in. He had never deposited a single check from the gym into that account. The money was always just there, every month, like magic. He thought it was his profit share. He never questioned why the accounting was handled by a third party. He hung up and tried his debit card. Declined. He tried the business credit card. Declined. He stood there in the humid Mexican air realizing that he did not have access to a single dollar. His wallet was full of plastic, but without me, those cards were just scrapers for his windshield. He walked back to the table. He looked pale. He looked smaller. What is wrong? Emily hissed. People are staring. Just pay the bill. I need you to get this one, babe, Dante muttered, avoiding her eyes. The bank flagged my accounts for security. It is a whole mess. I have to sort it out in the morning. Just put it on your card and I will Venmo you double tomorrow. Emily stared at him. Her mouth opened slightly. Me, Dante, my limit is only $2,000. This dinner is half of that. Just do it. Emily. Dante snapped, his fear turning into aggression. Stop counting pennies. We are rich. I will fix it tomorrow. Emily slowly reached into her designer purse, a purse I knew was a knockoff, and pulled out a generic bank card. Her hand was shaking as she handed it to the waiter. She wasn't angry yet. She was confused. She was scared. The narrative she had built in her head was cracking. The man who promised her the world was asking her to pay for his lobster. They walked out of the restaurant in silence. They didn't hold hands. The plan was to take a private limousine back to the hotel, but the car service required a pre-authorization on a card. Dante's cards were dead. Emily's card was maxed out from the dinner. They had to take a local taxi. As they sat in the back of the beat-up sedan bumping along the road back to the resort, Dante frantically checked his banking app. 0, 0, 0. Every account, the gym account, the savings, the emergency fund, all of them were linked to the master trust that I controlled. He turned to Emily, who was looking out the window, tears stinging her eyes. Babe, it is just a glitch, he lied. The system is down. But looking at his phone screen, seeing the red letters that said account closed. Dante felt the first true pang of terror. He wasn't rich. He had never been rich. He was just a man who had been kept afloat by a woman he called useless. And now he was sinking in the middle of the ocean, and the only person who knew how to swim had just left him on the shore. The flight back from Cabo was a masterclass in humiliation. Because all of Dante's credit cards had been frozen by my security team, they could not afford the change fees to keep their first-class seats on the later flight they had originally booked. Instead, they had to scrape together the last of Emily's cash to purchase 2 last-minute tickets on a budget airline. I know this because I received a notification from the travel monitoring service I still had linked to Dante's passport. They sat in row 34, right near the lavatories. Dante, a man who is 6 feet 2 inches of muscle and ego, was crammed into a middle seat between a crying toddler and a backpacker who clearly had not showered in days. Emily sat by the window staring out at the clouds, refusing to speak to him. The fantasy of the billionaire power couple had dissolved into the reality of lukewarm soda in plastic cups and zero legroom. I was sitting in my office in Atlanta, tracking their flight path on my iPad while sipping an espresso. I had timed the next phase of my plan perfectly. I wanted them to be exhausted. I wanted them to be irritable. I wanted them to cling to one last hope that their life in Atlanta was still waiting for them intact and luxurious. That hope was the matte black G-Wagon Dante had parked in the VIP section of the long-term parking deck. He loved that truck more than he loved me. He probably loved it more than he loved himself. It was his armor. It was the physical proof that he was a man of status. He had nicknamed it the Beast. He washed it by hand every Sunday. He did not know that the Beast was actually a corporate lease held by Pegasus Holdings, and that the lease agreement had a very specific clause regarding unauthorized drivers and financial insolvency. When they landed at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, it was raining, a gray, miserable drizzle that soaked into your bones. They waited 40 minutes for their luggage, because priority handling was no longer an option. I imagine the silence between them was deafening as they dragged their suitcases toward the parking deck. Dante was probably trying to rally. He was probably telling Emily that once they got to the car, everything would be fine. He would say something like, "Is just get to the truck, turn on the heated seats and drive home. I will fix the bank stuff in the morning." They reached the gold lot. This was the most expensive parking area reserved for people who did not care about daily rates. Dante walked with a heavy step toward row C spot 402. He had taken a picture of the location on his phone before they left. He walked past the rows of BMWs and Range Rovers, his eyes scanning for the hulking black silhouette of his pride and joy. He turned the corner. He stopped. The spot was empty. Well, not entirely empty. There was a small oil stain on the concrete where the G-Wagon had been, but the vehicle itself was gone. Dante dropped his suitcase. It hit the wet pavement with a thud. He blinked, rubbing his eyes as if the car would magically materialize if he focused hard enough. He walked into the empty parking space, spinning in a circle. "Where is it?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Emily. Where is the truck?" Emily stood by the curb, shivering in her thin resort wear. "I don't know, Dante." "You parked it. Are you sure this is the right level?" "I took a picture," Dante screamed, shoving his phone in her face. "Row C, spot 402. It was right here. Someone stole it. Someone stole my car." He began running toward the exit booth, his footsteps slapping against the wet ground. He looked frantic, unhinged. He pounded on the glass of the attendant booth. The woman inside, bored and tired, slid the window open slowly. "Help me," Dante yelled. "My car is gone. Stolen. A black G-Wagon. It was parked in C402. You have cameras, right? Call the police. Lock down the exit." The attendant looked at him with zero sympathy. "Sir, please calm down. If your car is not there, check your ticket. I know where I parked." Dante roared. He was attracting attention now. People loading their trunks were stopping to watch the tall man in the linen suit having a breakdown. "Call the police now. I will call security," the woman said, reaching for her radio. 10 minutes later, an airport police cruiser rolled up, lights flashing silently. An officer stepped out holding a clipboard. Dante rushed him, waving his arms. "Officer, thank God." "Grand theft auto. My G-Wagon. It is worth $200,000. You need to put out an APB." The officer held up a hand. "Name: Dante Jenkins." The officer flipped through a few pages on his clipboard. He didn't look excited. He didn't look like he was about to launch a manhunt. He looked like he was reading a grocery list. "Mr. Jenkins," the officer said calmly, "we have a record of a vehicle matching that description being removed from the premises at 0300 hours yesterday." "Removed?" Dante stammered. "Removed by who?" "Thieves." "No, sir," the officer said. "Repossessed. We have a towing order on file from the leasing agency, Pegasus Fleet Services. The order cites violation of contract and default on payments. They provided the spare key and the legal paperwork. It was a lawful recovery." Dante froze. The color drained from his face, leaving him a sickly shade of gray. Repossessed. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. That is impossible, Dante whispered. I own that car. I paid the down payment. The officer looked at the paperwork again. According to this, the vehicle is owned by Pegasus Holdings LLC. The authorized driver on the lease is a Sophia Carter. You are listed as a secondary operator pending good standing. The order says the standing was revoked. Emily, who had walked up behind him, let out a gasp. Sophia, she whispered. Pegasus is Sophia. Dante turned to her, his eyes wild. What are you talking about? Pegasus, Emily said, her voice trembling. The horse with wings. Sophia has a necklace with a Pegasus on it. She wears it all the time. You said it was cheap costume jewelry. The realization hit Dante like a physical blow. He staggered back, leaning against a concrete pillar for support. Pegasus Holdings, the company that owned his gym equipment, the company that owned the house, the company that owned the car. It was never an angel investor. It was never a bank. It was Sophia, all of it. Every single luxury he had enjoyed for the last 5 years had been signed, sealed, and delivered by the woman he had just discarded. He fumbled for his phone. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He dialed my number. I was watching the call come in on my screen. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I could imagine him praying. Please pick up. Please let this be a mistake. Please, Sophia, fix this. Then the automated voice cut in. The number you have dialed is not accepting calls at this time. Goodbye. He dialed again, and again, and again. He looked at the phone as if it had betrayed him. He looked at the empty parking spot. He looked at Emily, who was standing there with her arms crossed, looking at him not with love, but with disgust. So we have no car, Emily said, her voice flat. Dante didn't answer. He couldn't. And we have no money for an Uber, she continued, because my card is maxed out, and yours is frozen. Dante slid down the concrete pillar until he was sitting on the dirty ground of the parking garage. He put his head in his hands. The king of Atlanta, the fitness mogul, the man who needed a Ferrari. He was sitting in a puddle of oil, stranded at the airport with nothing but a suitcase full of dirty clothes and a wife who was already calculating her exit strategy. I turned off my iPad. I didn't need to see the rest. I knew they would eventually have to call his mother Louise. I knew Louise would have to drive her 30-year-old minivan all the way to the airport to pick them up. I knew Dante would have to fold his 6'2" frame into the back seat, sitting next to a car seat or a bag of groceries, while his mother lectured him the entire ride home. The G-Wagon was already parked safely in a secure warehouse on the other side of town. It would be cleaned, detailed, and returned to the dealership tomorrow. I would lose a little money on the early lease termination fee, but it was worth every penny. Because the price of Dante's ego was high, but the price of his humility, that was priceless. And the best part was, he still didn't know about the house. He thought he was going home to sleep in his own bed. He didn't know that the locks he had installed had already been bypassed by the locksmith I hired this morning. He didn't know that his key would turn, but the door wouldn't open. The ride home in his mother's minivan was going to be the longest hour of his life. But the night was just beginning. The ride from the airport was a masterclass in silent torture. Instead of the leather-lined interior of a limousine or the familiar roar of his beloved G-Wagon, Dante was folded into the back seat of his mother's 20-year-old minivan. The air conditioner had been broken since the Bush administration, and the upholstery smelled faintly of old peppermint and resentment. Louise, bless her heart, had not stopped talking since she picked them up at the curb. She complained about the traffic on I-85. She complained about the price of gas. She complained that missing her Tuesday night Bible study group to rescue her grown son was going to put her in bad standing with the church elders. Emily sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window with hollow eyes. She was still wearing her resort outfit, a flimsy linen set that looked ridiculous against the gray Atlanta drizzle. She had not spoken a word to Dante since the police officer told them the car had been repossessed. Every time Dante tried to lean forward and touch her shoulder, she flinched as if he were radioactive. Dante was sweating. He was checking his banking app every 30 seconds, praying for a miracle. He was hoping that maybe, just maybe, the freezing of his accounts was a 24-hour security protocol. He was hoping that when he walked through the front door of his mansion, he could call the bank from his landline, scream at a manager, and fix everything. He clung to the house in his mind. The house was his anchor. It was a sprawling 5-bedroom estate with marble columns and a pool that rivaled the one at the resort. As long as he had the house, he was still Dante Jenkins. He was still a king. Louise pulled the rattling minivan up the long, winding driveway. The headlights cut through the gloom, illuminating the manicured hedges and the imposing facade of the property. For a second, Dante relaxed. It was still there. It looked the same. The lights were off, which was strange because the smart home system usually turned on the porch lights at dusk, but he pushed that thought aside. "Just drop us at the door," Ma Dante muttered, reaching for the handle. "I have to make some calls." Louise grunted. "You better make some calls to Jesus, boy. I don't know what kind of mess you got yourself into losing a car at the airport. That is just careless." Sophia never lost a car. "Don't say her name," Dante snapped. He jumped out of the van before it fully stopped. He needed to get inside. He needed a drink. He needed to feel the expensive carpet under his feet to remind himself that this nightmare was temporary. Emily followed him slowly, dragging her suitcase through the wet gravel because she refused to lift it. Dante walked up the stone steps to the massive oak double doors. He punched the code into the keypad. Silence. No beep, no mechanical whir of the deadbolt sliding back. He frowned. The battery must be dead. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the physical emergency key. He jammed it into the lock and twisted. It didn't turn. It wouldn't budge. It felt like the wrong key entirely. "What is it now?" Emily asked, her voice trembling with a mix of exhaustion and rising panic. "It is stuck," Dante grunted, jiggling the handle violently. "The lock is jammed." He stepped back and looked up at the door. That is when he saw it. In his rush, he had missed the sticker. It was not a small notice. It was a bright neon orange piece of paper plastered right in the center of the door at eye level. It was the kind of sticker that is designed to be impossible to peel off. Dante leaned in, squinting in the dim light. "Notice of seizure and lock change." He read out loud, his voice barely a whisper. "Property management." Emily dropped her suitcase. "What does that mean? What is seizure?" Dante tore the paper off the door, ripping it in half in his frustration. "This is insane. I own this house. I pay the mortgage. How can they seize my house?" He did not pay the mortgage. He never had, and this was the moment the final, most devastating secret of our marriage was about to drop on his head like an anvil. See, Dante had a terrible credit score when we met. He had student loans, credit card debt, and a history of missed payments. When we moved into this house 3 years ago, no bank would touch him. So I stepped in. I told him I would handle the paperwork. I told him I found a private seller who was willing to do a deal. I set up a lease-to-own agreement. But not between Dante and the seller. The agreement was between the seller and my trust, Pegasus Holdings. The trust bought the house outright. Then the trust leased the house to Dante under a strict occupancy contract. The contract had a very specific clause titled the Familial Occupancy Rider. It stated that the primary tenant, Dante Jenkins, was granted the right to live in the property solely due to his legal marriage to the trustee, Sophia Carter. It explicitly stated that in the event of a divorce, filing legal separation, or infidelity proven in a court of law, the lease would be immediately terminated and the right of occupancy would be revoked without notice. Dante thought he was paying a mortgage every month. In reality, he was transferring money into a savings account I managed, which I used to pay the property taxes and maintenance. He was essentially a tenant with a very generous landlord, and the landlord had just evicted him. Dante was now banging on the door with his fist. Open up! This is my house. I know you are in there. Who are you yelling at? Dante? Emily screamed. There is nobody in there. It is dark. Dante turned to her, his eyes wild. Sophia did this. She hacked the system. She changed the locks remotely. He pulled out his phone to call the police again, but then he saw the smaller print on the bottom of the orange sticker he was clutching. Property manager, Pegasus Holdings, LLC. Reason for action, unauthorized tenancy, following dissolution of marriage. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. He remembered the name. The police officer at the airport had said it. Pegasus, the company that took the car. It isn't a hack, Dante whispered. He slumped against the doorframe. She owns it. She owns the company that owns the house. Emily stared at him. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of crickets and the idling engine of Louise's minivan. What did you say? Emily asked. Her voice was low, dangerous. She set it up as a rental. Dante stammered, his mind racing to find an excuse. To protect us from taxes. She said it was for tax benefits. I didn't know she put clauses in it. So you don't own this house, Emily said. She stepped closer to him. The rain was plastering her hair to her face, ruining the $1,000 blowout she had gotten for the wedding. I paid for it, Dante yelled, defensive. I sent the money every month. But is your name on the deed, Dante? Emily screamed back. Is your name on the paper? No, Dante roared. Because I trusted her. Emily let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You trusted her. You told me you were the boss. You told me you built this empire. You told me Sophia was just a leech who handled your calendar. She was. Dante lied, desperate to keep the narrative alive. She is manipulating everything. Emily grabbed the orange notice from his hand. She held it up to the light of the minivan. Pegasus Holdings, she read. Sophia's necklace. Oh my God, I am so stupid. She turned to Dante and shoved him. She shoved him hard in the chest. You are a fraud, she spat. You are a broke, lying fraud. You have nothing. You have no car. You have no money. And now you are telling me we are homeless, babe. Calm down, Dante pleaded, reaching for her. We are not homeless. We can go to a hotel. I will fix this in the morning. With what money? Dante, Emily shrieked. Her voice cracked, echoing down the quiet suburban street. Lights in the neighboring houses began to flick on. The Johnsons next door opened their blinds. The curtains at the Davis house twitched. You made me pay for dinner. You made me pay for the taxi. You have $0. She was hysterical now. She began hitting him with her purse, swinging it wildly. You promised me a kingdom. You told me I would never have to work again. I left my job for you. I humiliated myself on the internet for you. And you are just a squatter in your ex-wife's house. Louise rolled down the window of the minivan. Hey, keep it down. You are waking up the whole neighborhood. Get back in the car before someone calls the cops again. Emily spun around to face Louise. I am not getting back in that piece of junk with you. I want to go home. You ain't got a home, honey, Louise shouted back, her patience finally snapping. And don't you dare call my van junk. It is the only roof you have over your head right now because my son apparently is a fool who let a good woman go for a gold digger who can't even count. Emily let out a guttural scream of frustration. She looked at the locked mansion. She looked at Dante, who was cowering against the door. She looked at the minivan. I hate you, she hissed at Dante. I hate you so much. She grabbed her suitcase and marched back to the van, throwing the door open. She didn't get in the front seat this time. She climbed into the back, slamming the door so hard the vehicle shook. Dante stood alone on the porch. The rain was coming down harder now. He looked at the orange sticker on the ground. He looked at the house that he had bragged about on every date, in every Instagram story, in every conversation for 3 years. It was never his, he was just a guest, and his checkout time had passed. He picked up his suitcase. It felt heavier than before. He walked slowly back to the minivan, his expensive Italian loafers squelching in the mud. He opened the passenger door and slid in next to his mother. Louise didn't look at him. She just put the van in reverse. "Where are we going?" Dante asked quietly. "To the basement," Louise said. "And don't expect me to cook for you. Sophia isn't here to buy the groceries anymore." As they drove away, leaving the dark mansion behind, Dante looked back one last time. He saw a security camera blinking red above the door. He knew I was watching. He knew I had seen the whole thing. And he was right. I was sipping a glass of wine in my new penthouse, watching the feed on my phone. I saw the fight. I saw the shame. And as the taillights of the minivan disappeared into the night, I toasted to the empty house. It would be on the market by Monday. And the profit from the sale, that was going into a scholarship fund for women who wanted to study forensic accounting. Because education is expensive, but ignorance costs you everything. The basement of Louise Jenkins's house was not designed for human habitation. It was a storage space, a graveyard for broken Christmas ornaments, dusty exercise equipment from the 90s, and stacks of National Geographic magazines that no one had read in 20 years. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and damp concrete, a stark contrast to the lavender-scented air filtration system of the mansion Dante had just been evicted from. For the last 12 hours, this concrete box had been the bridal suite for the newlyweds. Dante and Emily slept on a deflated air mattress that Louise had dragged out of the attic. It was covered in sheets that were clean but rough, smelling faintly of mothballs. When the sun began to rise, filtering through the single tiny window near the ceiling, the reality of their situation illuminated the room like a harsh interrogation light. Emily woke up first. She sat up, her designer silk pajamas, wrinkled and stained with sweat from the humid room. She looked around at the exposed insulation in the ceiling and the water heater humming in the corner. She let out a groan that sounded more like a wail. "Dante!" She kicked him. "Dante, wake up! I cannot breathe in here. It smells like poverty." Dante rolled over, covering his head with a pillow. "Leave me alone, Emily. It is too early." "I am hungry," she whined, standing up and stepping onto the cold concrete floor with her bare feet. She recoiled instantly. "Ew. It is sticky. This is disgusting. I am going upstairs. Your mother better have some avocado toast, or at least some organic coffee." Upstairs, Louise was already in the kitchen. She was a woman of routine. Every morning at 6, she made a pot of strong Folgers coffee and cooked a full breakfast. Bacon, eggs, grits, and biscuits. It was the way she showed love, but it was also the way she asserted control. Her kitchen was her kingdom. When Emily walked in, the smell of frying bacon hit her like a wall. She wrinkled her nose, waving her hand in front of her face. "Oh my God!" Emily coughed. "What is that smell? It is so greasy. It is clogging my pores just standing here." Louise turned from the stove, spatula in hand. She looked Emily up and down. Emily was wearing a robe that was too short, and her attitude was already too loud for 6 in the morning. "Good morning to you too," Louise said dryly. "It is called breakfast. Real food. Something you look like you need a little more of. You are looking frail." "I don't eat pork," Emily snapped, walking to the refrigerator and yanking it open. "And I don't eat gluten. Do you have any almond milk or oat milk?" Louise laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "I have 2% and I have water. Take your pick. And close my refrigerator door before you let all the cold air out. We do not air condition the whole neighborhood." Emily slammed the door shut. "This is ridiculous. How can you live like this? There is nothing healthy here. And why does this whole house smell like old people? It smells like Vicks VapoRub and dust." Louise dropped the spatula. The metal clanged against the cast iron skillet. She turned the burner off slowly. The silence in the kitchen was sudden and terrifying. "Excuse me," Louise said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You heard me," Emily said, crossing her arms. She was tired, hungry, and lashing out at the easiest target. It smells old. It is depressing. Dante told me he grew up in a nice house. He didn't tell me it was a museum of ancient history. We need to hire a cleaning crew to deep clean this place if we are going to stay here. I have allergies. Louise walked around the kitchen island. She moved with a speed that belied her 65 years. She got right in Emily's face. "Let me get this straight, little girl," Louise said. "You are sleeping in my basement. You are using my water. You are breathing my air. And you have the audacity to stand in my kitchen wearing my son's money on your back and tell me my house smells. It is the truth." Emily shrugged, though she took a step back. "This house is paid for." Louise hissed. "Every brick, every beam. My husband worked 2 jobs for 30 years to buy this house. I scrubbed these floors on my hands and knees every Saturday while you were still swimming in your daddy's pool. You want to talk about cleaning? Here is the mop." Louise pointed to the pantry. "If you want it clean, clean it yourself. But do not sit there and act like you are a queen when you are a refugee." Emily scoffed. "I am not a refugee. I am an influencer, and I am not mopping floors. That is what help is for. That is what Sophia used to do." The name hung in the air. Louise blinked. "Sophia?" Louise repeated. "Yeah," Emily said, sensing a weakness. "Dante told me Sophia used to come over here and clean your kitchen. She used to cook for you. She was desperate for your approval. Well, I am not Sophia. I have self-respect. I don't need to scrub your floors to prove I am worthy." Louise stared at her. The memory hit her hard. She remembered Sundays. Sophia would come over in her comfortable jeans and a t-shirt. She would bring fresh groceries. She would laugh with Louise while chopping vegetables. She would wipe down the counters without being asked. She would organize Louise's pill organizer for the week. Sophia didn't do it because she was desperate, Louise realized with a sudden pang of guilt. She did it because she had class. She did it because she respected her elders. "Sophia," Louise said quietly, "never complained about the smell. Sophia bought me that rug you are standing on. Sophia paid for the new roof last year when it leaked." "Well, Sophia is gone," Emily snapped, "and you are stuck with me. So maybe you should be a little nicer to the woman who is actually married to your son. Now, if you are not going to make me something edible, I'm going back downstairs to wake up Dante. Tell him we need to leave. I cannot stay in this dungeon another night." Emily turned and stomped back toward the basement door. Louise stood alone in the kitchen. Her chest felt tight. A familiar pressure began to build behind her sternum. Her heart fluttered uncomfortably. She reached for the pill bottle on the windowsill. Her blood pressure medication. She shook the bottle. It was empty. "Oh, Lord," she muttered. She needed a refill. She walked over to the landline and dialed the pharmacy. She had been using the same pharmacy for 20 years. They knew her. "Hello, this is Louise Jenkins," she said when the pharmacist answered. "I need a refill on my lisinopril and my statins." "One moment, Mrs. Jenkins," the pharmacist said. Louise waited, tapping her fingers on the counter. She looked at the greasy bacon she no longer had the appetite to eat. "Mrs. Jenkins," the pharmacist came back on the line. Her voice sounded awkward. "I am afraid we have a problem. When we tried to run the claim, it came back rejected." "Rejected?" Louise frowned. "That is impossible. I have the Platinum Senior Care Plan. It covers everything. The system says the policy has been terminated effective yesterday," the pharmacist said. "We can fill it for you, but you will have to pay the cash price. That will be $480 for both prescriptions." "400?" Louise gasped. "I don't have that kind of money lying around." "Why was it terminated?" "I am not sure, ma'am. You would have to contact the policyholder." Louise hung up. Her hands were shaking. Gio, the policyholder. For the last 5 years, she had assumed Dante paid for her insurance. He had brought her the card. He had told her, "Ma, I put you on the best plan money can buy. You never have to worry about a bill again." But Dante had no money. Dante had no house. A terrible suspicion began to form in her mind. She picked up the phone again. She dialed Sophia's number. She didn't want to call. Her pride was screaming at her to put the phone down. but the tightness in her chest was getting worse and the indignation was rising. How dare Sophia cancel her insurance? Even if they were divorced, you don't play with an old woman's health. It was spiteful. It was cruel. She was going to give Sophia a piece of her mind. She was going to demand that Sophia turn it back on at least for 30 days. The phone rang. Hello? It was not Sophia's voice. It was cool, professional, clipped. I want to speak to Sophia, Louise demanded. This is Louise Jenkins, her mother-in-law. Carter is unavailable at the moment, the voice said. This is Sarah, her executive assistant. How can I help you, Ms. Jenkins? Sarah. Louise remembered her, the girl who sometimes answered Dante's phone when he called Sophia's office. You tell Sophia to get on this phone right now, Louise said, her voice rising. I am at the pharmacy. My insurance has been canceled. I need my heart medicine. Does she want to kill me? Is that her plan? To kill off the mother of the man she claims to love? There was a pause. A silence so cold it felt like the temperature in the kitchen dropped 10 degrees. Ms. Jenkins. Sarah said, her tone devoid of any sympathy. Ms. Carter is no longer your daughter-in-law, and she certainly does not claim to love your son anymore. As for the insurance, Sarah paused as if checking a file. Yes, here it is. The Diamond Tier Health Policy. That policy cost $2,500 a month. It was a perk paid for directly by Ms. Carter's private charitable trust. It was not a legal obligation. It was a gift. A gift, Louise stammered. But, Dante said. Dante lied. Sarah cut her off. Dante has never paid a premium in his life. Ms. Carter paid for your heart surgery, Ms. Carter paid for your physical therapy, and Ms. Carter paid for your prescriptions for 60 months. Louise felt her knees go weak. She grabbed the edge of the counter to support herself. But I am sick, Louise whispered. I need the medicine. Then I suggest you ask your son to pay for it, Sarah said. Or perhaps his new wife can help. I hear she is an influencer. Maybe she can get you a discount code. Sarah. Wait. Louise pleaded, the fight draining out of her. Please, just tell Sophia I am sorry. Tell her I didn't know. Ms. Carter is aware that you didn't know, Sarah replied. Because you never asked. You never thanked her. You only praised Dante for money he didn't earn. Ms. Carter has closed the charitable trust, Ms. Jenkins. There are no more handouts. The line went dead. Louise lowered the phone slowly. It slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the linoleum floor. She looked around her kitchen. The bacon was cold and congealed in the pan. The coffee pot was hissing. From the basement, she heard Emily's voice screaming at Dante again. This air mattress has a hole in it. I am touching the floor. Fix it, Dante. Fix it now. Louise closed her eyes. The tightness in her chest wasn't just physical anymore. It was the crushing weight of realization. She had bet on the wrong horse. She had worshipped the son who was a parasite and scorned the daughter who was the host. She sank onto one of the kitchen chairs and put her head in her hands. $480. She checked her purse. She had $20 and a book of stamps. She looked at the basement door. Dante! She screamed, her voice cracking with a mixture of rage and grief. Get your behind up here. We have bills to pay. But she knew deep down that nobody was coming to pay them. Not anymore. The basement of his mother's house was suffocating, a concrete box filled with the smell of failure and mothballs, so Dante fled to the only place where he still felt like a king. His gym. D-Body Fitness was his sanctuary, a glass and steel temple dedicated to his vanity located in the heart of Buckhead. For years he had walked through those double doors like he was the mayor of Atlanta High, fiving clients, flirting with the front desk girls, and surveying his kingdom of treadmills and weights. He believed this place was untouchable. He believed that no matter what happened with the house or the car, the gym would always generate cash. It was his ATM. But as he walked into his office that Tuesday morning, smelling of stale sweat because the water heater in his mother's basement was broken, he did not find a sanctuary. He found an execution squad in the form of an email inbox. At 9 o'clock sharp, the first domino fell. It was an email from the Apex Group, the lead investor that had put up $300,000 for the recent expansion and the new cryotherapy wing. Dante had always bragged about landing Apex, claiming he charmed them with his business acumen. He never knew that the Apex Group was actually a limited liability company managed by my college roommate Jessica, who is now a venture capitalist in Chicago. I had asked her to front the money using my capital, so Dante would feel like a big shot. Dante opened the email. His hands were shaking. "Dear Mr. Jenkins," the email read, "due to recent reports regarding your personal insolvency and the seizure of your primary assets, the Apex Group is exercising the material adverse change clause in our partnership agreement. We are initiating an immediate capital call. You have 48 hours to return the principal investment of $300,000, or we will begin the liquidation of all gym equipment to recoup our losses." Dante gasped, dropping his phone on the desk. $300,000. He didn't have $300. Before he could even process the panic, the second email arrived. This one was from the landlord of the commercial building. "Mr. Jenkins," it said, "we have been notified by your guarantor Pegasus Holdings that they have withdrawn their surety bond for your lease. Without a guarantor, your lease is in default. You are required to vacate the premises by Friday." Dante slumped into his leather chair, the one he had spent $5,000 on to look like a CEO. He was hyperventilating. It was a coordinated attack. It was a massacre. He grabbed his hair, pulling at the roots. "Sophia," he whispered. "She is killing me. She is actually killing me." He needed help. He needed a distraction. He needed his wife. Emily had insisted on coming to the gym with him that morning. She claimed she wanted to help him strategize to use her influence to bring in new high-paying clients. "Babe, I will sell personal training packages," she had said in the car. "I will use my charm. Men love me. We can fix this." Dante stood up, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He needed to find Emily. Maybe she had closed a deal. Maybe she had found a lifeline. He walked out onto the gym floor. It was mid-morning, usually a busy time, but the floor felt strangely empty. The vibe was off. The staff looked at him with pity or worse, amusement. They knew. In the age of social media, everyone knew. The eviction from the mansion was probably already on a local gossip blog. He checked the cardio area. No Emily. He checked the smoothie bar. No Emily. He walked toward the VIP training rooms in the back. These were soundproof studios designed for high-profile clients who wanted privacy. As he approached Studio B, he saw the door was slightly ajar. He heard a giggle. It was that high-pitched, breathless giggle that Emily used when she wanted something. Dante smiled weakly. "She is working," he thought. "She is charming a client. Good girl." He pushed the door open, ready to play the part of the welcoming owner. The smile died on his face. Emily was not training a client. She was not holding a clipboard or demonstrating a squat. She was pressed up against the mirrored wall, her legs wrapped around the waist of Jax, the 22-year-old head trainer Dante had hired last month. Jax was young, with the kind of natural physique Dante had to take steroids to maintain. His hands were gripping Emily's waist, and her face was buried in his neck. They were not just flirting. They were entangled, intimate. Dante stood there for 3 seconds, his brain unable to process the image. His wife. The woman he destroyed his marriage for. The woman he was currently sleeping on a basement floor with. "Hey!" Dante roared. The sound tore through the soundproofing like a gunshot. Jax jumped back, looking terrified. Emily slid to the floor, adjusting her spandex top, but she did not look terrified. She looked annoyed. "Dante," she said, wiping her mouth. "You are supposed to be in your office." Dante charged into the room. His vision was red. He grabbed Jax by the shirt and shoved him against the equipment rack. "Get out!" Dante screamed, spit flying from his mouth. "Get out of my gym before I kill you! You are fired! Get out!" Jax didn't argue. He scrambled for the door, muttering an apology, leaving Dante alone with Emily. Dante turned to her. He was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. "How could you?" he whispered. "We have been married for 5 days." 5 days, Emily. I gave up everything for you. I lost my house. I lost my car. I am losing this business, and you are in here with the help. Emily stood up. She smoothed her hair in the mirror, checking her lipstick. She turned to him, and her eyes were colder than ice. You didn't give up everything for me, Dante, she said calmly. You lost everything because you are a loser. There is a difference. Don't you call me that? Dante yelled, stepping toward her. He raised his hand, pointing a finger in her face. I am the victim here. Sophia ruined me. And now you are cheating on me. I am surviving, Emily screamed back, her mask finally slipping completely. Look at you, Dante. You are broke. You live in your mother's basement. You smell like mildew. Did you think I married you for love? I married you because you said you were a king, but you are just a jester. She laughed, a cruel mocking sound. Jax has potential, she continued. He has a future. You are done. Stick a fork in it, Dante snapped. The rage that had been building for 48 hours, the humiliation of the airport, the shame of the minivan, the terror of the emails, it all exploded. He grabbed Emily by the shoulders. He didn't hit her. He just wanted to shake her, to make her see him, to make her stop laughing. Stop it, he yelled, shaking her. Stop laughing at me. Emily let out a shriek. Let go of me! She stumbled back, tripping over a yoga mat. She fell, hitting her hip against the weight bench. It wasn't a hard fall, but Emily, ever the opportunist, saw an opening. She stayed on the floor. She curled into a ball, clutching her hip, and started screaming. Help! He is hurting me! Help! Domestic abuse! Dante froze. He looked at his hands. He looked at her. Emily, get up. I barely touched you. The door burst open. 3 gym members and a staff member rushed in, phones already out, cameras recording. They saw Dante standing over his crying wife. They saw the fear in her eyes. He hit me, Emily sobbed, looking directly into the lens of a member's iPhone. My husband attacked me because I asked for a divorce. He is crazy. Call the police. No, no, no. Dante stammered, backing away, his hands up. She is lying. She was cheating on me. Sir, step away from her, a large male gym member said, stepping between Dante and Emily. Dante looked around the room. He saw the judgment. He saw the flash of the cameras. He realized with a sick feeling that this video would be online in 10 minutes. Emily looked up at him through her fake tears. And then she whispered something only he could hear. I am going to sue you, Dante. I am going to sue you for assault. I am going to take whatever is left of this gym. I am going to take your mother's house if I have to. You wanted a trophy wife. Well, trophies are expensive. Dante turned and ran. He ran out of the VIP room, ran past the staring staff, ran out of the glass doors of D-Body Fitness. He ran until his lungs burned, collapsing on the sidewalk a block away. He had lost his past. He had lost his present. And now, thanks to the woman he chose over me, he had just lost his future. I watched the security footage from my office. I had access to the gym cameras because technically Pegasus Holdings paid for the security system. I watched Dante run. I watched Emily check her hip, stop crying instantly, and ask the member to send her the video so she could post it. I took a sip of my tea. The gym was dead. The marriage was dead. But the lawsuit, that was going to be the final nail in the coffin. And the best part was, I didn't even have to swing the hammer. They were doing all the work for me. Dante sat on a rusted metal bench in a park 3 blocks away from the gym he no longer controlled. His linen suit was stained with sweat and dirt from his fall, and his expensive Italian loafers were scuffed beyond repair. Passers-by gave him a wide berth, seeing a man who was clearly unraveling, muttering to himself while gripping his phone like a lifeline. He was not looking at job listings. He was not looking for a lawyer. He was looking at a photo of me. It was an old photo taken 4 years ago at a company barbecue. I was wearing a simple sundress, smiling up at him with adoration. I looked small next to him. Manageable. Safe. For the last 5 days he had convinced himself that I was the villain, the shrew who was holding him back. But now, stripped of his car, his house and his business, The fog of his narcissism momentarily cleared only to be replaced by a desperate, terrifying clarity. He realized that I was the source. I was the well. And he had been foolish enough to poison the water. But Dante, being Dante, did not feel remorse. He felt entitled. He convinced himself that the money I had used to fund his life was actually marital property he was owed. He convinced himself that if he could just talk to me, if he could just unleash the full force of his charisma or his rage, I would crumble. I always crumbled. I always forgave him. I was Sophia, the quiet accountant who just wanted to be loved. He opened his phone dialer. It was 1:18 in the afternoon. By 4:18, my phone had registered exactly 185 missed calls. I was sitting in the conference room of my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, reviewing the restraining order application. I had placed my phone on the table, face up, silent but vibrating. It buzzed against the mahogany wood like an angry hornet. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Mr. Sterling looked at the phone, then at me. "Do you want to turn that off, Ms. Carter?" "No," I said, taking a sip of water. "Let it ring. Every vibration is evidence. Every voicemail is a nail in the coffin." Dante's campaign of harassment began with what he thought was charm. The first 20 calls were followed by texts that were almost pathetic in their transparency. "Baby, please pick up. I am so sorry. Emily is crazy. She tricked me. She made me say those things. I still love you. We can fix this." Then when I didn't answer, the tone shifted. The desperation set in. "Sophia, pick up the phone. I am sleeping on the floor. I am hungry. You cannot do this to me. I am your husband. Remember our vows, for better or for worse. This is the worst part, and you are abandoning me." Around call number 50, the begging turned into gaslighting. "You planned this, didn't you? You wanted to humiliate me. You are sick, Sophia. You are controlling. You set me up with the gym just to take it away. You are trying to emasculate me because you are jealous of my potential." I watched the text scroll by on the screen, feeling nothing but a cold detachment. It was fascinating in a clinical way to watch a man go through the 5 stages of grief in real time via iMessage. Then came the anger. "You owe me, Sophia. I gave you the best years of my life. I made you a mother. Oh wait, I didn't because you were too busy working to give me a son. You are a cold, barren witch." Mr. Sterling flinched when he read that one over my shoulder. I didn't. I knew Dante. I knew he would aim for the things I used to be insecure about. But he didn't realize that my insecurities had left the building along with my love for him. Finally, at 3 o'clock, the threats began. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the mistake that would cost him not just his marriage, but his ability to ever function in decent society again. Dante sent a picture. It was a photo from our honeymoon, intimate and private. It was followed by a text that made my blood run cold, not with fear but with resolve. "If you don't unlock the accounts and transfer $50,000 to my Venmo in the next hour, I am going to post this. I will send it to your boss. I will send it to your church group. I will put it on Twitter. Everyone will see the real Ms. Carter." Mr. Sterling saw the message. He sat up straighter, reaching for his legal pad. "That is extortion," he said, his voice grave. "And revenge porn. In the state of Georgia, that is a felony. We can have him arrested within the hour." I held up a hand. "Not yet," I said. "Arresting him is too easy. He will make bail. He will play the victim. He will say he was emotional. I want to make sure he has nowhere to go when he gets out." I picked up the phone. I didn't call the police. Not first. Instead, I opened my contacts list. As a crisis manager, I had a network that spanned the entire city. I knew every human resources director in the Fortune 500. I knew the board members of the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. I knew the head of the Small Business Association. And most importantly, I knew the owners of the other high-end gyms in the city where Dante might try to get a job as a trainer. I took screenshots of the threats. I took screenshots of the racial slurs he had used against his own people when he was angry. I took screenshots of his admission that he had used company funds for personal vacations. Then I drafted a single email. Subject safety alert and professional blacklist notice regarding Dante Jenkins. The body of the email was professional, concise, and devastating. To my esteemed colleagues and partners, I am writing to inform you of a security risk involving Mr. Dante Jenkins, formerly of D-Body Fitness. Mr. Jenkins is currently under investigation for extortion fraud and cyber harassment. Attached, you will find documented evidence of his threats to release non-consensual, intimate imagery of a corporate executive, as well as admissions of financial malfeasance. Please be advised that Mr. Jenkins is currently unstable and may attempt to seek employment or financial assistance within your organizations. For the safety of your female employees and the integrity of your financial assets, I strongly recommend flagging his profile in your hiring systems. Sincerely, Sophia Carter, Vice President of Risk Management. I hit send. The email went to 300 people, the most powerful people in Atlanta. Within 10 minutes, the responses started pinging. Received, Sophia. So sorry you are dealing with this. He is flagged in our system. Noted, Ms. Carter. We have revoked his guest pass at our country club effective immediately. Got it. We just received an application from him an hour ago. It has been shredded. I sat back in my chair. Dante was sitting on a park bench, thinking he held a nuclear weapon in his hand. He didn't know that I had just cut the wires to his entire future. He thought he could ruin my reputation. With a photo, I just ruined his livelihood with the truth. Dante decided to escalate. When the hour passed and I didn't send the money, he didn't post the photo. He was a coward, and deep down he knew that posting it would be a step too far. Instead, he decided to come to me. I saw the dot on the GPS tracker on his phone moving. He was heading toward my office building. He was coming to make a scene. He probably imagined storming into the lobby demanding to see his wife, making me look weak in front of my employees. But he forgot that I worked in risk management. I called the head of building security. Mr. Henderson, I said, the subject we discussed is approaching the building. He is hostile. Please initiate Protocol Red. Protocol Red meant that Dante wouldn't even make it through the revolving doors. I watched from the camera feed on my laptop. Dante walked up the steps of the Sovereign building, looking disheveled and manic. He tried to push through the doors. Mr. Henderson and two other guards, massive men who looked like linebackers, stepped in his path. I am here to see Sophia Carter, Dante yelled, trying to shove past them. She is my wife. She is stealing my money. Mr. Henderson didn't raise his voice. He simply held up a clipboard. Mr. Jenkins, you have been trespassed from this property. We have also received a notification from the citywide security network. You are barred from entering any building managed by Carter Logistics or its affiliates. That includes this tower, the mall across the street, and the bank on the corner. Dante looked around bewildered. What? You can't do that. I have rights. You have the right to leave, Mr. Henderson said, placing a heavy hand on his taser. Or you have the right to be carried away in handcuffs for criminal trespassing and harassment. We have the logs of your calls, sir. 185 calls. The police are already on their way to take a report. Dante looked at the guards. He looked at the people walking by in their business suits, people who looked like he used to look. They were staring at him like he was a vagrant, like he was dangerous. For the first time, the reality of his situation truly pierced his delusion. He wasn't fighting a wife he could bully. He was fighting a system that I had built brick by brick while he was busy looking in the mirror. He backed away. He lowered his head. He turned and walked back down the stairs, his shoulders slumped. He had nowhere to go. No job waiting for him. No gym to train in. No friends to borrow money from because I had CC'd them on the email too. I turned off the vibration on my phone. The buzzing stopped. The silence in the room was beautiful. Mr. Sterling looked at me with a mixture of fear and respect. Remind me never to cross you, Ms. Carter, he said. I gathered my papers. I am a very fair woman, Mr. Sterling, I said, standing up. I give everyone exactly what they invest. Dante invested in cruelty. I am just paying him his dividends. The leather seats of my new Bentley Flying Spur were soft-smelling of rich hide and success, a stark contrast to the chaotic world I had left behind. My driver, a stoic former military man named Marcus, navigated the midday Atlanta traffic with a smoothness that made the city feel like a backdrop in a movie rather than a place I had to battle. I was checking emails on my tablet, finalizing the acquisition of a small boutique fitness chain that had gone into foreclosure, a poetic little business move that amused me when the car came to a sudden jarring halt. Marcus cursed under his breath, a rare break in his professional demeanor. I looked up, expecting to see a traffic accident or a construction detour. Instead, I saw a man standing in the middle of the street, his arms spread wide, blocking a vehicle that weighed 3 tons. It was Dante. But it was not the Dante of last week. It was not the arrogant king in the white tuxedo or the gym owner barking orders. This was a man who had been chewed up by the machinery of his own hubris and spit out onto the asphalt. His clothes were wrinkled, likely the same ones he had been wearing for days. His hair, usually lined up with geometric precision, was growing out in patchy tufts. He looked desperate, he looked dangerous, but mostly he looked pathetic. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt immediately, his hand moving to the concealed carry holster inside his jacket. "Ms. Carter, stay inside. I will handle this." "No," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. My voice was calm, surprising even me. "If you step out, he will make a scene. He will claim you assaulted him. He wants a settlement, Marcus. He wants a reason to sue. Let me handle this. This is just another crisis, and I manage crises for a living." I pressed the button to lower the privacy partition. Then I pressed the button to lower the rear window. But I did not lower it all the way. I left it half open, a physical barrier between my world and his. I did not take off my oversized Celine sunglasses. I wanted him to see his own reflection in the black lenses, not my eyes. Dante saw the window move. He rushed to the side of the car, falling to his knees on the dirty sidewalk. He gripped the door handle with both hands, his knuckles white. Passers-by on Peachtree Street stopped to watch. Phones came out. In Atlanta, a black man begging on his knees beside a $250,000 car was content gold, and Dante knew it. He was performing. "Sophia," he wailed, his voice cracking. "Baby, please. Look at me. Look at what you are doing to me." I looked at him. I looked at the dark circles under his eyes and the sweat beading on his forehead. "Get up, Dante," I said. My voice was low, barely audible over the hum of the city. "You are embarrassing yourself, and you are scratching my paint." He did not get up. He slumped forward, pressing his forehead against the metal of the car door. He began to sob. It was a wet, ugly sound. "I have nowhere to go, Sophia. I am sleeping in my mother's basement. She won't feed me. The gym is gone. My friends won't answer my calls. I am hungry. I am literally hungry. How can you be so cold? We were married. We were one flesh." "You broke that flesh, Dante," I said. "You cut it off the moment you served me divorce papers while I was in a hospital bed." "I was confused," he shouted. Lifting his head, tears streamed down his face, mixing with the grime on his cheeks. "Emily, she manipulated me. She got in my head. She told me you were holding me back. But she is the devil, Sophia. She is lazy. She is mean. She is nothing like you. You are my queen. You are the only one who ever really understood me." I watched him cycle through his tactics. Flattery, victimhood, blame shifting. "I want to come home," he whispered, his voice dropping to a begging rasp. "I will sign whatever you want. I will work for you. I will be your assistant. Just let me come home. I can't be with her anymore. She is pregnant, Sophia. She is having a baby, and I don't love her. I am stuck with a baby I don't want with a woman I hate. Please save me. You always save me." He reached through the open window, trying to touch my hand. I pulled back sharply. That was the hook he thought would catch me. The baby. He knew that our struggle to conceive had been the quiet tragedy of our marriage. He thought that mentioning a child would trigger my maternal instinct, that I would feel pity for a father trapped in a loveless situation. But Dante, as always, had forgotten the details. He had forgotten who handled the medical files. He had forgotten who paid the bills. I reached into my Hermes Birkin bag. I did not pull out a checkbook. I did not pull out a tissue to dry his tears. I pulled out a single folded piece of paper. It was a copy of a medical report from 3 years ago from the fertility specialist we had seen at Emory. Dante had never read this report. When the doctor called back then, Dante had been too busy grinding at the gym to take the meeting. I had taken the call. I had sat in the doctor's office alone and listened to the results. And when I came home that night to tell him, he had cut me off. He had screamed that he was a man, that his machinery worked fine, and that if we couldn't get pregnant, it was because of my stress or my age. He refused to look at the paperwork. He refused to believe the problem could be him. To protect his fragile ego, I had buried the file. I had taken the blame. I had let him believe I was the broken one. But I kept the receipt. Dante, I said, my voice cutting through his sobbing. Listen to me very carefully. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. He thought I was reaching for my wallet. You mentioned Emily is pregnant, I said. You said you are stuck with a baby. Yes, he nodded frantically. She is 3 months along. She trapped me, Sophia. But I will pay support. I will do the right thing. Just take me back. I held the paper out the window. Take this, I said. He took it confused. His trembling hands unfolded the document. What is this? He asked, squinting at the medical jargon. It is a semen analysis report from Dr. Steinberg dated 3 years ago, I explained calmly. Read the summary at the bottom. Dante read. I saw his eyes scan the lines. Motility 0, morphology abnormal, azoospermia. He looked up at me, his mouth open, uncomprehending. It means you are sterile, Dante, I said. The doctor told me that your chances of conceiving a child naturally were less than 1%. It is virtually impossible. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I didn't want you to feel like less of a man. Dante stared at the paper. He shook his head. No. That is wrong. Emily is pregnant. She showed me the test. Emily is pregnant, I agreed. I don't doubt that. She is a young, healthy woman. But if she is pregnant, Dante, that baby is not yours. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His face went slack. The tears stopped, replaced by pure shock. She cheated, he whispered. She is an opportunist, Dante, just like you, I said. And opportunists usually have backup plans. You were her winning lottery ticket, but she probably kept a few other tickets in her pocket just in case. I pressed the button to roll up the window. The glass slid up smoothly, creating a barrier between us that would never be broken again. Congratulations on becoming a stepfather, I said through the glass. I hear it is a very rewarding job. Marcus Drive. The Bentley accelerated. The engine purred a low growl of power that pushed us forward. I looked in the rearview mirror. Dante was still kneeling on the sidewalk. He was holding the paper in one hand, staring at it as if it were a death sentence. People were walking around him, snapping photos, laughing. He was a statue of ruin. He had lost his wife. He had lost his fortune. And now he had lost his lineage. I sat back in the seat and took a deep breath. For years I had carried the shame of our infertility. I had let his family whisper that I was too career-focused to give him a son. I had let him look at me with disappointment every month when the test was negative. I had carried his secrets to keep him tall. Now I dropped them to watch him fall. I picked up my phone and called Sarah. Sarah, I said, send a fruit basket to Emily's mother's house. Put a note in it. What should the note say? Ms. Carter, just right, truth always delivers. I hung up. I looked out the window at the skyline of Atlanta. The city was full of people pretending to be something they were not. But in my car, in my life, there was finally only truth. And it tasted sweeter than revenge. Dưới đây là nội dung phần 13 của kịch bản được viết bằng tiếng Anh, theo đúng yêu cầu của bạn. giống kệ liền mạch không ngắt quãng, tập trung vào diễn biến tâm lý và hành động đảm bảo độ dài và các từ khóa cảm xúc. The walk from the sidewalk where I left Dante to his mother's basement must have been the longest mile of his life. He was holding the paper I gave him, the medical proof of his sterility, like it was a live grenade. When he finally kicked open the door to the damp, mildew-scented room that had become his marital home, Emily was sitting on the deflated air mattress, trying to glue a broken nail back together. She looked up, expecting him to have returned with money or at least a plan. Instead, she saw a man who looked like he had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had laughed back. Dante didn't scream. He was past screaming. He simply walked over to her and dropped the crumpled report onto her lap. Emily looked at it confused at first. Then I saw the color drain from her face as she read the diagnosis. She didn't try to deny it. She didn't burst into tears and beg for forgiveness. That is the thing about opportunists. When they are cornered, they don't panic, they pivot. Emily looked at Dante, let out a short, cold laugh, and tossed the paper onto the concrete floor. "So you know," she said, her voice devoid of the baby voice she used to use to manipulate him. It was a relief, honestly. The charade was exhausting. Dante stared at her, his voice trembling as he asked the question that had been eating him alive for the last hour. "Who is the father?" Emily shrugged, standing up and brushing the dust off her silk robe. "Does it matter, Dante? You are broke. You are homeless. You have nothing. Even if this baby was yours, how were you going to feed it? With your ego, with your lies about being a tycoon. At least the real father has a job." Dante lunged at her, then not to hurt her but to grab her shoulders to shake some humanity into her. "You ruined my life," he choked out. "I left a queen for you. I left a woman who built me up for a woman who tore me down." Emily pushed him away with a strength fueled by pure survival instinct. She looked at him with disgust. "You ruined your own life, Dante. I just helped you speed up the process. And now I am done. I am not going down with this ship." She grabbed her phone. She didn't pack her bags. She didn't call a taxi. Her first instinct wasn't flight, it was narrative control. She knew that in the court of public opinion, the first person to cry is usually the one who wins. She walked into the corner of the basement where the lighting was slightly better set up, her phone on a stack of old National Geographic magazines, and turned on the ring light she carried in her purse. She fixed her hair, pinched her cheeks to make them look flushed, and hit the Go Live button on Instagram. I was watching. I had alerts set for both of them. Within seconds, thousands of people tuned in. They were hungry for drama. They had seen the video of the fight at the gym. They had seen the rumors about the repossession. Now they wanted the finale. Emily looked into the camera, her eyes filling with tears on command. "Hey guys," she whispered, her voice cracking perfectly. I don't even know how to say this. I am so scared right now. I just need to tell my truth before he spins the story." She paused for effect, letting the comments roll in with hearts and concerned emojis. "Dante, the man I thought was my soulmate, he is a fraud. He lied to me about everything. He told me he owned his house. He told me he owned his business. He told me we were set for life. I just found out today that he has been stealing from his ex-wife for years. And when I confronted him, when I told him I couldn't be part of his lies anymore, he attacked me." She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "He threw me against the wall. He threatened me and my unborn baby. I am currently hiding in a basement because he lost our home. I have nowhere to go. Please, I just need help to get a ticket home to my mom. I am terrified." Dante stood in the background watching her performance in horror. He screamed at her to stop, to tell the truth, but his shouting only made her story more believable to the viewers. "See," she cried, pointing the camera at him. "He is crazy. He is violent." The comments section exploded. People were calling Dante a monster. They were tagging the police. They were sending money to her Cash App link that she had conveniently pinned to the bottom of the screen. For a moment, it looked like she was going to get away with it. It looked like she was going to use Dante's corpse as a stepping stone to a new life as a victim influencer. But Emily forgot one thing. The internet is a detective agency that never sleeps, and I had given them all the clues they needed. While she was crying about being a victim, I sent a single text message to a popular gossip blog that had been covering the downfall of the Jenkins empire. The text contained two things. First, the security footage from the gym, showing her cheating with Jax the trainer. Second, the time-stamped medical report showing Dante was sterile, juxtaposed with her pregnancy announcement timeline. The blog posted it immediately with the caption, "The math ain't mathing." The tide turned so fast it caused whiplash. 1 minute the comments were full of support. The next, the detectives arrived. "Wait, isn't that the guy she was kissing in the gym video?" one user commented. "Why is she asking for money when she is wearing a $3,000 bracelet?" another asked. Then the knockout punch. Someone posted a link to the medical report leak. "Girl, that baby isn't even his. You are scamming a homeless man. You are the predator here." The hearts turned into clown emojis. The support turned into vitriol. The hashtag gold digger. Emily began to trend on Twitter within 10 minutes. People started digging into her past. They found her old tweets mocking working women. They found photos of her partying on yachts with other married men. The narrative she tried to build crumbled in real time. Emily saw the comments shifting. She saw the clown emojis flooding the screen. Her tears stopped instantly. The panic in her eyes became real. She tried to delete the live stream, but it was too late. Someone had already screen recorded it. She ended the broadcast and threw her phone onto the mattress. She looked at Dante, who was leaning against the wall, a grim smile on his face. He had lost everything, but seeing her fall gave him a moment of twisted satisfaction. "Looks like the world knows you too, Emily," he said. Emily didn't respond. She grabbed her suitcase. She shoved her clothes in indiscriminately, leaving behind the expensive lotions and hair products because she couldn't carry them. She was moving with the frantic energy of a rat fleeing a sinking ship. She didn't look at Dante. She didn't look at Louise, who had come down the stairs to see what the noise was about. She dragged her bag up the stairs, past the kitchen she had insulted, and out the front door. I was waiting in my car down the street, hidden by the tint and the distance. I watched her struggle down the driveway, calling an Uber that kept canceling on her because her rating had tanked. Finally, a beat-up sedan stopped. She threw her bag in and climbed into the back seat. She wasn't heading to a luxury hotel. She wasn't heading to a yacht. Based on the direction, she was heading to the Greyhound bus station. She was going back to the small, dusty town she came from, back to the trailer park she had sworn she would never return to. She was leaving Atlanta with a ruined reputation, a baby that had no father on the birth certificate, and the permanent label of a failed gold digger. As her car disappeared around the corner, a delivery truck pulled up to the Jenkins driveway. The driver walked up to the porch and left a large cellophane-wrapped fruit basket. It was the one I had ordered. Attached to the handle was a note in elegant calligraphy. It didn't need to be long. It just said, "The truth always delivers." Dante walked out onto the porch and picked it up. He read the note. He looked down the street, scanning the cars, looking for me. But I was already gone. I didn't need to see him cry again. I had seen enough. The queen had taken the king and the pawn. The board was clear. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving the game. I had won it. The courtroom was cold, smelling of lemon polish and old wood, a stark contrast to the humid heat of the Atlanta summer outside. I sat at the defense table next to Mr. Sterling, my hands folded calmly on the polished oak surface. Across the aisle, Dante sat with a lawyer he had likely found on a billboard near the highway. He was wearing a suit that was clearly bought off the rack from a discount store, the sleeves slightly too long, the fabric cheap and shiny under the fluorescent lights. He looked tired, his eyes darting around the room, but there was still a flicker of that delusional arrogance in his posture. He believed, truly believed, that this was his payday. He had sued me for financial infidelity, demanding 50% of my assets and ongoing spousal support based on my $325,000 salary. He was trying to argue that by hiding my income, I had deprived him of the marital lifestyle he was entitled to. It was a bold strategy for a man who had kicked his wife out of her own house 2 weeks ago. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, tapped her gavel. We are here to hear the motion for spousal support and asset division in the case of Jenkins versus Carter. Mr. Jenkins, your counsel may proceed. Dante's lawyer stood up, buttoning his jacket nervously. Your Honor, my client was deceived. For 7 years, he believed his wife was a low-income accountant. He made financial decisions, including taking on business debts, based on the understanding that he was the primary provider. Had he known Ms. Carter was a high-earning executive, he would have structured his life differently. She committed fraud by omission. She watched him struggle while sitting on a mountain of cash. We are asking for a fair share of the wealth accumulated during the marriage retroactive to the date of her first promotion. Dante nodded vigorously, looking at the judge with what he hoped were puppy dog eyes. He wanted her to see him as the victim of a cruel, hoarding wife. The judge turned to my table. Ms. Carter, do you have a response? Mr. Sterling stood up slowly. He didn't look nervous. He looked like a man who was about to hunt for sport. Your Honor, he said, his voice deep and resonant. We move to dismiss all claims with prejudice. The plaintiff's argument hinges on the idea that he was unaware of the financial dynamic of the household. However, we have evidence that contradicts his claim of victimhood. In fact, we have a sworn affidavit signed by Mr. Jenkins himself, less than 14 days ago, in which he legally defined the financial reality of this marriage. Dante frowned. He whispered something to his lawyer. Mr. Sterling walked to the center of the room holding up a document. It was the blue-backed file from Part 2, the expedited divorce agreement that Dante had forced me to sign when he thought he was winning. Exhibit A. Mr. Sterling continued. This is the dissolution of marriage settlement agreement drafted by Mr. Jenkins's previous legal team and signed by both parties. In this document, specifically Clause 4, Mr. Jenkins swore under penalty of perjury that he was the, quote, sole provider of the household. He claimed full ownership of the residence and the vehicles, and he explicitly stated that Ms. Carter, quote, made no significant financial contribution to the acquisition or maintenance of marital assets. I watched Dante's face. The color was starting to drain away. He remembered the document. He remembered gloating when I signed it. He remembered thinking he was smart for making me waive my rights to the house so he could keep it. He didn't realize that by claiming he was the sole provider, he had legally blocked himself from ever claiming he was dependent on my income. Mr. Sterling turned to Dante. You cannot have it both ways, Mr. Jenkins. You cannot tell this court on Monday that you are a tycoon who pays for everything to steal the house, and then tell the court on Friday that you are a destitute husband who needs alimony. This is judicial estoppel. You are bound by your previous sworn statements. The judge took the document from the bailiff. She read it over her glasses. She looked at Dante. Mr. Jenkins, is this your signature? Dante stood up, knocking his chair back. I didn't read it carefully. I just wanted her out of the house. She tricked me. So you admit to signing legal documents without reading them, or are you admitting to perjury? The judge asked, her voice sharp. Because this document says you waived all rights to spousal support because you claimed you were the wealthier party. But she has millions, Dante shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. She is rich. She played me. The judge banged her gavel. Sit down, Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Sterling wasn't done. He walked back to our table and picked up another file. This one was thick red and stamped with the logo of the Internal Revenue Service. Furthermore, Your Honor, Mr. Sterling said since Mr. Jenkins has firmly established in legal filings that he was the sole operator and beneficiary of D-Body Fitness, and that Ms. Carter was merely a spectator, we have adjusted the tax filings for the last 5 years to reflect his testimony. Dante's eyes widened. He stopped breathing. Previously, Ms. Carter filed jointly and used her own capital to cover the tax liabilities of the business, Mr. Sterling explained. However, since Mr. Jenkins insisted on a clear separation of assets and claimed full ownership of the business revenue, Ms. Carter has filed an amended return. This separates her finances from his business entirely. This means Mr. Jenkins is now solely responsible for the back taxes, payroll taxes, and penalties associated with D-Body Fitness for the fiscal years 2018 through 2023. Mr. Sterling dropped the heavy file onto the plaintiff's table. It landed with a thud that sounded like a coffin closing. According to the audit, which was triggered by the amended filing, Mr. Jenkins owes the IRS $150,000 in unpaid taxes and penalties. Dante looked at the number. 150,000. He let out a small, strangled noise. That is not my debt, Dante whispered. She paid the taxes. She always paid the taxes. She paid them when she was your wife, Mr. Sterling corrected. But you divorced her. You claimed you did it all yourself. So congratulations, Mr. Jenkins. You did it all yourself, including the debt. The judge looked at the tax documents. She looked at the divorce agreement. She looked at Dante, who was now sweating profusely, his cheap suit clinging to his skin. It seems pretty clear to me, the judge said, closing the folder. Mr. Jenkins, you came into my courtroom asking for equity. But equity requires clean hands. Your hands are not clean. You attempted to defraud your wife when you thought she was poor, and now you are attempting to defraud the court because you found out she is rich. She picked up her pen. The motion for spousal support is denied. The motion for asset division is denied, based on the pre-existing agreement signed by the plaintiff. Furthermore, I am forwarding the transcript of this hearing to the district attorney's office to review for potential perjury charges regarding your conflicting financial affidavits. Dante slumped forward, his head hitting the table. And regarding the tax liability, the judge added, that is between you and the federal government, Mr. Jenkins. But I suggest you find a payment plan, because tax evasion carries a prison sentence. Case dismissed. The gavel banged. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. I didn't look at Dante. I turned to Mr. Sterling and shook his hand. Thank you, Arthur. Excellent work. I walked down the center aisle of the courtroom. As I passed Dante's table, he reached out and grabbed the hem of my jacket. It was a weak, desperate grasp. Sophia, he croaked. I am going to jail. They are going to put me in jail for the taxes. Help me, please. I don't have $150,000. I don't even have lunch money. I stopped. I looked down at his hand touching my expensive fabric. I gently peeled his fingers off one by one. I know, Dante, I said softly. But look on the bright side. In prison, you won't have to worry about rent, and I hear the gym facilities are free. I walked out of the courtroom doors into the bright, blinding hallway. My driver was waiting. My company was waiting. My life, my real life was waiting. Behind me, I heard Dante start to scream, a sound of pure, unfiltered regret. But I didn't turn around. I had a flight to catch. I was going to Paris, and I was flying first class. Alone. And finally free. The applause in the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel was not polite. It was thunderous. It washed over me like a warm tide vibrating through the floorboards and settling deep in my chest where a dull ache used to live. 1 year ago, I was sitting in a sterile courtroom watching my life get dismantled by a judge's gavel. Today I was standing at a podium made of reclaimed glass, the keynote speaker for the annual Black Women in Leadership Summit. The theme of the conference was Phoenix Rising, and as I looked out at the sea of faces, women of all ages dressed in power suits and vibrant colors, I knew there was no better living embodiment of that theme than the woman I had become. I adjusted the microphone. I was wearing a white suit today, sharp and tailored to perfection. No more hiding in gray cardigans. No more dimming my light to keep a fragile man from squinting. Thank you, I said, my voice steady and amplified across the room. Thank you for that introduction. A year ago, I was defined by what I had lost. I lost a marriage. I lost the illusion of a happy home. I even lost the man I thought was my partner. But in that loss, I found the most valuable asset in my portfolio. I found myself. The crowd murmured in agreement. I saw heads nodding. I used to be a crisis manager for other people, I continued. I fixed broken companies. I salvaged ruined reputations. But I was letting my own life operate in a deficit. I was investing in a partnership where the returns were zero. I was subsidizing a man's ego with my own silence. And let me tell you, ladies, the tax on silence is too high. You cannot afford it. I looked toward the front row. There, sitting in the center seat reserved for VIP guests, was Julian. He was looking at me with an expression that Dante had never been capable of. It wasn't possessiveness. It wasn't jealousy. It was pure, unadulterated pride. Julian was 40 years old, an award-winning architect who had designed the very skyline I looked out at from my office. He didn't need my money. He had his own. He didn't need my dimness to shine. He had his own light. When I finished my speech, Julian was the first one to stand up. He waited for me at the bottom of the stairs, offering his hand to help me down. His grip was firm, reassuring. "You were incredible, Sophia," he whispered, kissing my cheek. "Every time you tell that story, you help someone leave a cage they didn't know they were in." I smiled, interlacing my fingers with his. The engagement ring on my finger caught the light. It wasn't a gaudy rock meant to show off to Instagram. It was a vintage sapphire, elegant and timeless, exactly like the life we were building. We were closing on a brownstone in Chicago next month, a place we picked out together, where both our names would be on the deed. "Are you ready to go?" Julian asked. "The car is waiting. We have that dinner reservation at Le Bernardin." "I am ready," I said. As we walked out of the ballroom surrounded by flashing cameras and well-wishers, I felt a sense of peace so profound it almost brought me to tears. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I had turned my pain into power and my trauma into a testimony. Meanwhile, 400 miles away, the sun was setting on a very different scene. New York City was bustling, the air thick with exhaust fumes and the noise of millions of people fighting to be seen. On the corner of 42nd Street and 7th Avenue, amidst the chaos of Times Square, a delivery man was struggling with a heavy cart. He was wearing a brown uniform that was slightly too tight across the shoulders, and his name tag hung crookedly on his chest. It was Dante. His life had taken a predictable downward spiral after the trial. With a felony record for tax evasion and a suspended sentence, no gym would hire him. The fitness community is small, and my email had been effective. He had been blacklisted from every reputable establishment in the South. He had moved north, hoping to disappear, hoping to start over where nobody knew the name Dante Jenkins. But trouble has a way of following you when you carry it inside your own heart. He was working double shifts now, delivering packages for minimum wage to pay off his IRS debt. His hands, once manicured and soft, were rough and calloused. His face was gaunt, the stress of survival eating away at the handsome features he had once banked on. He stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. He wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. He was tired. His back ached. He was thinking about the ramen noodles waiting for him in his shared studio apartment in Queens. "Hey buddy, watch it!" a pedestrian snapped as Dante's cart bumped into him. "Sorry," Dante muttered, keeping his head down. He had learned humility the hard way. The light didn't change. The crowd grew thicker. Dante looked up just for a moment, trying to see what was causing the delay. That is when he saw it. Above the heads of the tourists, above the yellow taxis, there was a massive digital billboard wrapping around the corner of the building. It was an advertisement for Forbes magazine's annual Women to Watch issue. The screen flashed white, then dissolved into a high-definition portrait that was 50 feet tall. It was me. I was standing with my arms crossed, looking powerful, looking serene. The headline next to my face read, "Sophia Carter, The Business of Resilience: How One Woman Turned a Personal Crisis into a Financial Empire." Dante froze. The noise of the city seemed to fade away, leaving only a high-pitched ringing in his ears. He blinked, thinking he was hallucinating from exhaustion. But the image remained. It shifted to a video clip of me speaking at the conference, the very speech I had just given. I saw him watching me. Or rather, he felt the eyes of the giant digital version of me looking down at him. In the video, I was laughing at something Julian had said off camera. I looked radiant. I looked younger. I looked happy. Dante's grip on the delivery cart loosened. His mouth opened slightly. "Sophia," he whispered. The light changed to walk. The crowd surged forward, bumping into him, jostling him. "Move it, pal," someone shouted. Dante tried to step forward, but his legs felt like lead. He was paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of what he was seeing. He was delivering cardboard boxes in the rain, while the woman he called useless was looking down on the center of the world. He saw the ring on my finger in the video. He saw the way I glowed. And in that moment, the crushing weight of his mistakes finally broke him. He realized that he hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost his lottery ticket. He had lost his chance at a good life because he was too insecure to let me lead. His hand slipped from the handle of the cart. A package marked fragile slid off the top of the stack. Smash! The sound of breaking glass echoed on the pavement. Dante looked down at the broken package. Then he looked back up at the screen. The ad was fading, replaced by a commercial for soda. I was gone. He stood there in the middle of Times Square, surrounded by millions of people, completely and utterly alone. He dropped to his knees to pick up the broken shards, tears mixing with the grime on his face. He was exactly where he deserved to be, picking up the pieces of a mess he made while I was flying high above the clouds. The screen fades to black. My voice comes over the darkness, warm and intimate, speaking directly to you. We often stay in toxic situations because we are afraid of the unknown. We are afraid that if we leave, we will be lonely, or we will fail. But I am living proof that the only thing you should fear is staying in a place where you are tolerated, not celebrated. Don't ever lower your standards to make someone else feel comfortable. If they cannot rise to meet you, they don't deserve to be in your orbit. The best revenge isn't nasty texts or lawsuits, though those can be fun. The best revenge is living a life so full, so rich, and so beautiful that their absence becomes irrelevant. Let them watch you on the billboard while they are stuck on the sidewalk. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever had to rebuild yourself from the ashes, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with a woman who needs to be reminded of her power. I am Sophia, and my story is just beginning. Thank you for watching. We often believe that shrinking ourselves will make us easier to love, but my journey proves that playing small only invites disrespect. True partnership celebrates your ambition. It never asks you to apologize for it. Dante's downfall wasn't caused by my vengeance, but by the inevitable consequences of his own arrogance. Ultimately, the most powerful comeback isn't about destroying those who hurt you, but about rebuilding your own life so magnificently that their existence no longer matters. Your worth is non-negotiable, and sometimes the empty chair at your table is the greatest gift you can give yourself. If you are ready to stop apologizing for your success and start writing your own chapter of resilience, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice and transformation.